Well, hello everyone. We are back for week 6 of the WTRL Zwift Racing League. Dave Toll, your legend. How are you today? We're going to do some hot laps around a whole lot of lava in Watopia. I think it's going to be a good one.
I love this course, and it's so good to see you, Kate, down there in Australia, bringing smiles to our face. So, all right, let's get it on. This is tough. 3 laps out here. Actually, almost 42K, longest race that we have throughout the entire season. Over 500 meters of climbing. And what was really bizarre to me, Kate, was it doesn't seem like 500 meters when you're not on the bike, but when you're on the bike, it's an entirely different story. Every race, though, is played out quite differently, to tell you the truth. Yesterday, Premier League, we saw some huge groups going to the line, but it seems like, you start with the smaller fields as we do with the women here, and they're going to get right to it. I would imagine we'll see a big split happening on the first time up volcano, like KOM, but in this case, QOM.
Well, let's take a bit of a look at that course because it is pretty nasty and it does cause a whole lot of fireworks out there. We did see a couple of big rides in the women's, especially where they went solo, but for the most part, big groups. They start at Watopia Pier. It's about 7.5K before they hit the climb. But Dave, that KOM, that's a nasty one.
Yeah, it really is. And again, it's not a steady climb per se. It never gets incredibly steep. It actually flattens out a little bit, but it creates for quite a dynamic out there. And we have a lot of points. We've got fastest time segments. The WTRL, the community races, are even more dynamic than the Premier League, with all the points being thrown at you left, right, and center. Your team has to come in with a real plan. And we've got ourselves what will be quite a showdown out here. It's also interesting to note that the finish line is not at the top of the KOM, but it's down back inside the volcano there. So always good to remember that. They do get 3 good looks at it. As you mentioned, they don't really start onto the circuit until they get a few K into the race. That's been the only reprieve, to be honest, Kate, that I've noticed is I haven't seen anyone seriously attack before they get onto the circuit yet, but leave it up to this group, America's West. They have at it.
Yeah, you never know, right? There's always someone who'll do it. Let's take a quick look. The women are out on course, but let's take a quick look at the standings before we jump down, and we'll probably catch them as they're going up that first QOM. So for the A women, the Velocity Vixen leading ahead of ATP Swarm, and the Revo Scores sitting there in third. They always put on a pretty good show, and we expect nothing less today.
Then we got the Bees here and the Audi women's team. I got some cool intel on them this week. That's a great program, sitting there on 99 points. You can see that Cryogen Mount Evans is right there. We're running out of runway here for season 2, but it's still possible for Cryogen Mount Evans to make that move and end up on top of the table. Wadi Inc. Ice Cat sitting in third right now, and it's close there with Cadence and Penn Velo WB. There's a lot to race for out here today in the Bees, so we'll be jumping in and joining them.
A near perfect score for those Audi women, and similarly a near perfect score for Revo Musketeers on 98 points, but not far back, only 1 point between them and Herd of Meerkat, so that is a good race to watch. KRTC Lightning Strikes in third, another Herd of Meerkats there in fourth, and the Fillets sitting in fifth.
We're going to jump right into the racing now. There's a good look at the lava, the molten lava. That's what your legs feel like after 3 times up the volcano KOM, as we're going to have Cabot, the Vixen rider dangling off the front. So, okay, you can see that they're into the volcano 5K in, so they're on to the first of 3 circuits here. This is Gil that we're looking at. So, again, if you've been following along with us, the America's West, we do have a significantly smaller field. It doesn't mean the quality is any less. As a matter of fact, I have to give my full credit to all the women that race in this group, because you don't catch much of a break. There's not a lot of draft. We've talked about that before, Kate. Racing in a smaller group just means your TSS is going to be higher. You do more work. There's less time sitting in the wind. We kind of get right down to brass tacks on kilometer 1. versus some races where no one lollygags out here. Let's be honest. Esports is not for the weak of heart. But this group, you're pretty exposed. If you don't have good legs, you've got nowhere to hide.
No, you certainly don't have anywhere to hide. It's a bit of it. You're right. It's such a difference in a small group, isn't it? Because this climb has been consistently described as draftable, which is to say that if you have a nice pack to sit in, it's not nearly as nasty on the legs. But when you have a small field to start, you kind of lose the advantage of that, don't you? There's no draftability when there's such a small group.
Yeah,
And I do think that when it kicks up here, Dave, I reckon that they'll probably kick it up a gear, string it out a bit, and take even the smallest of draft. They will really put that on edge. So it's just who from each team is going to be the sacrificial lamb that goes early, because it's a pretty long day in the saddle when you're starting to attack in the first 10K.
it is. And we'll have a chance to look at the riders like Alicia Stats and Janet Gillick that traditionally the cream always rises to the top on a hard climb. There's just no way to fake that. I don't know, Kate, where you heard draftable climb. I love that. Actually, I hadn't heard that in the last 2 days. And that is the perfect way to describe Volcano KOM. And look at the speeds that they carry on that climb. And a big part of that is the faster you're going, the more of a draft there is. And even though I'm a big guy, sitting on me when I'm going 12 kilometers per hour doesn't offer you much draft, right? But when you've got someone who's moving at 42K per hour, even a tiny little being is going to give you something to work with there.
Well, there's
So, yeah,
a question for you, Dave, an answer to in the Zwift world that I'm not sure of, but you're our expert here, so maybe you know. What happens in terms of avatar size? Does a bigger rider provide a bigger draft than a smaller framed rider, like in real life? I'm very curious to know the answer to that. I mean,
so
because
you
if that's
start
the
that you
case,
start
there's a whole lot
asking
of
that.
Zwifters that are getting a big draft off me, but I'm not sure I'm getting much off too many.
But I love the fact that you phrase that by saying, Dave, as a bigger person yourself, you would be perfect to answer this, right? Um, it's so funny. So this, I'm going to ask our producer to help with that. Although I'm going to say absolutely that the size of the rider, because you can see the avatar changes, dependent upon your height and your weight, obviously. But and we still haven't. There's a lot that we've enjoyed, and we've had some good laughs along the way, Kate. I genuinely just truly enjoy working with you as a colleague. But I don't. We've asked some questions that haven't been answered, like how do you get the cool muscle, the upper body?
Yeah,
I've never
yeah.
figured that out. My avatar looks like a tall, slightly thick wimp compared to a lot of them
Have you
out
ever
here.
noticed that a lot of our questions are relating to how to get our avatars to look
Public image.
muscly and give them better
Yeah.
drafts? Like,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
there's a fairly consistent theme going on here.
Yeah, I think we're at that point. I'm at that point in my life, right, where you have your last grasp at vanity. Well, here we go. This is all about making the watts. I love it. This is going to be Troyer that we've got here, the Velocity Vixen team. A ton of respect for this squad. I love what they do. They certainly, and Alicia Stats now out of Seattle here, is always going to be a rider to watch on the Revo team. She's got one teammate, but boy, what a potent combo they are. Anna Rogers is the other rider, the American and the Canadian on that Revo Scores team. So they're both right up on the front right now. Troyer, Connolly, Miller, Gill, Whitaker, all in line. But here we go. It stopped being fun about 30 seconds ago for half the field here.
Yeah, this is a tough section of the climb. Pamela Troyer is certainly more suited to the longer climbs. She's the kind of rider who could set a pace and keep a bit of a diesel pace going the whole time. In fact, it's to her disadvantage for the pace to be taken over by a more dynamic rider like Alicia Stutz, who has a much better 5-minute power as opposed to being kind of a diesel 20-minute beast. I think based on what we saw in APAC and what we saw in EMEA and also Premier League up here, Dave, it's been pretty surprising that a lot of the athletes that have prevailed have been the more dynamic kind of classics rider rather than the climbers. We thought that the sprinters would definitely get jettisoned out the back pretty quickly. But that hasn't seemed to happen.
No.
This climb,
Yeah.
it's a very deceptive one, isn't it?
This is a sprinter's climb. I've never said that before, but we have seen multiple examples of riders that you would consider. So I hate classifying riders, and I had a good discussion with Matt Stevens about exactly that, how much of a psychological head game that can be. But riders who wouldn't be considered as climbers, certainly not pure climbers, but even riders that excel in climbing have made it into the group that goes to the line today. So if you can make it over 511 meters of climbing over the course of 3 laps out here on this, this is a feared circuit when you talk about a whole lot of lava. And I don't know. I don't want people to sell themselves short. I mean, Josh Lipka and Christina Grossman were two good examples from the Americas East that we saw. Riders that are, traditionally considered to be sprinter-ish types. But in modern racing, Kate, and I think that you really saw this start during your career, where the term, he's a sprinter, she's a sprinter, that almost doesn't exist anymore. Yes, there are riders who are sprint specialists, but you have to be such a well-rounded rider to make it to the finish line at the World Tour level. I mean, let's not forget, guys like that. You look at the best sprinters in the world. Look how much climbing they do to get to the Champs-Élysées in the Tour de France, right? I mean, it's a little unfair to think of them as it's not like they're good old Freddie Martins from the 60s, a Belgian sprinter that couldn't get over an freeway overpass. That's for sure.
That
So
is
back
that is a
in,
very good point you make.
thanks, Kate. Back in with this front group. They're hanging together here. Do you think that maybe these ladies realize that we've got a long day, again, the longest day all season out here? Maybe not a bad idea to ride. Nobody wants to be out here suffering alone for 30K, do they?
No, well, for the most part, we've seen because they've got segment time. So at the top of this segment, we have first over the line, and we also have the fastest through the segment. And overwhelmingly, it's been that fastest segment has happened on the first lap. So that's been quite interesting to watch all of the groups go out quite hard and race it pretty hard from the beginning. Um, in saying that, when you know your competitors really well, there's a little bit more cat and mouse involved, and that's what we have seen of this bunch evolve into over this first 6 weeks of this season too, is that they're all getting to know each other pretty well by now, and there's a little bit more of a wait and see kind of game that goes on, as opposed to those bigger bunches where they've just got to slim it down and just got to get rid of some riders. They're riding up here at a decent pace, but there still is a fair bit of control. Alicia Starts is setting the pace without accelerating too much, just a fairly consistent slog up here, and she's doing a really great job of that. They do have a number of options. Any of this front bunch, if they were to attack off the front, they would have definitely a chance of staying away if they timed it well. Let's talk about power-ups for a second, Dave, because we've got the Ghost this week, which is a bit of a different power-up. And if you use that, it makes you invisible, so your competitors can't see you when you go. Now, we in commentary can see when somebody drops a Ghost power-up, but their competitors can't. So if used at the right time, that one can be pretty interesting.
It is. I haven't seen anyone use that with a stunning effect yet, but I'm just waiting for that moment. That's going to be gameplay here at the very highest level. We do have the other standard power-ups that you've gotten used to out here in play as well, but it looks like we're going to get through this climb. Well, I did want to go back to what you were talking about, Kate, because in the community racing, we have some facets that we add in that you don't see in Premier that I like a lot, including that fastest time segment. Now, I don't know how it worked out for you. You've been with a couple of different races out there today, but it's been the hot lap has been the first lap in most cases, which you never really know, to tell you the truth. A lot of times it depends on the way the race is playing out. In the men's race that we watched from America's East, the third lap was far from the quickest because everybody had already moved into the finale mode. They were racing for the finish, no longer really looking at the last bracket of bonus points that they could collect. So this time we've got really both things at play because I'm going to expect our fastest lap from these women is being made right now.
There are a lot of points on offer for that fastest through segment. Overwhelmingly, you're right. That didn't happen. The fastest time happened on the first lap and not by the back end when things had been sorted out a little bit. But in saying that, Rachel Elliott in EMEA pulled off a
Right.
massive ride and a massive win, and each lap she got faster. But that
And
was
it
a
was a solo
season
win, correct?
standout
That's going
ride.
to be
It was incredibly impressive. So Hayley Gill
Haley
goes
Gill.
over the
Boom.
line there and takes that one. She will finish just ahead of Alicia Stats. Whitaker coming over in third. There are gaps opening up. This could be quite a lonely ride if they don't regroup, and early on as well. The 5, Dave, it's looking like Anna Rogers might sweep up from the back, and they may be a small bunch of 5 with a really interesting dynamic.
I'm going to agree with you on this one. Rogers might be the last rider to catch the winning train out of the station. And if you're not on the Pacific Northwest 805, I guess it's 705. I don't know if you're winning a bike race here today because that's split. So this is Anna Rogers. Actually, it's going to come back together. 3 more riders look like they're going to be able to rejoin, make it more like 5 riders. So I'm going to anticipate we've got just under 10 riders in our front group about a minute from now, Kate. But you're right. That was touch and go right there for a moment. And
We'll see if we can get some of those splits, Dave, because it'll be interesting to see what time they did go through that segment on. That'll give us a bit of an indicator of how within their limits we are, because we can compare and contrast that with some of the other grades. We know the class that is amongst this group, and so we can kind of have a bit of a guess at how fast they may be able to go overall.
And ask and ye shall receive. So it looks like that 734.3 is going to be the quickest, and that's Hayley Gill right there for the Velocity Vixen. Alicia Stats at a 736 flat. So Hayley Gill and Fuego now. We're actually looking at the Velocity Vixen rider right here. Alicia Stats in the dark blue jersey. This is the front group right now. Jessie Whitaker, the other rider there. Velocity Vixen are in good shape. They'd like to stop the vote right now. Stop the race. Right?
It's not amazing for Whitaker to be outnumbered by Stats and Gill. That's quite a combination to be riding with, but a very good breakaway to be part of, actually. Hayley Gill has been a bit of a sensation this season. Each week she's really put a hand up and made a big effort. Stats, of course, we kind of discovered her last season where she really stepped up and showed that she's got a whole lot of horsepower in there. Now let's just flick our eye to the other side of the screen, and it looks like Brendan Trecky Johnson maybe is there. He's one of the Aussie riders, if it is him. Oh, actually, it may not be. I'm seeing an American flag there next to his name. See, that's what happens with all these names, Dave. There's so many of them. Sometimes we're left guessing exactly which one it may be. But we do have, this is a very good time zone to have people, a lot of the Aussies are joining this as well. Oh, and the Ghost is being used.
Yep.
But you're right, there was no real effect there. That was kind of just a dropping the Ghost and hoping
they're dumping.
A new one.
They're dumping the Ghost power-up is probably the least useful of the lot, I'm going to say, Kate. So I think they're just getting rid of it so that they can clear the deck.
I love a good Ghost power-up, I think, but only if you're going to use it to make an attack, or only if you're going to use it in the sprint. So there's many chances to get more power-ups between now and the end, so they won't be saving them for the finish, definitely.
And with this much climbing,
too early to attack with a Ghost.
Yeah, I'd say that. I mean, especially right now, tactically, if you're using a Ghost, you're not going to have a race-winning move here on lap number 1. But being able to get a little bit of a weight reduction or a draft bonus would be a nice boost early in the race. So that's my thought, anyways.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that the weight reduction one can be really handy just sitting in a pack. If, for example, going up the climb, you need to take a drink. It's really good. It kind of gives you like 15 or 20 seconds where you can just take a drink, keep pedaling without having to, really worry about your heart rate going through the roof in order to hold that wheel. So it can come
I was
handy in
thinking,
ways, not just for
like,
attacking, right?
yeah, exactly, Kate. Like if you drop your towel, right, and you know that you don't want to take the
Yes.
pressure off the pedals, but it's going to take you 2 seconds to reach down and get that towel, right? Well, the perfect time to do it would be drop an aero power up, then you reach down and grab it, and then the impact is less. It all adds up. I heard you talking about marginal gains earlier today on a previous broadcast, and I couldn't have agreed more. And that's really the one thing that we call it Zwift efficiency. And the riders that are able to figure out where you can save a watt here or there, it makes a massive difference. So you can see this is the front group here for the B women that we're looking at. Love cryogen. This program has been absolutely crushing it out here lately. And this is going to be Hutter and Pup that we're looking at. Let's see who they've got with them here. Looks like Mays from
Well,
Pendello in the red and white.
Morgan Aldridge is a name that we see pop up a lot too. So this is a pretty solid chase group that we're looking at. If we look top right of screen and we can see those green dots, it can get very confusing because on the volcano they go round and round, and you can get a bit twisted in that. But it gives a bit of an idea how far in front that break is. Something we noticed this morning on this course in the EMEA league, Dave, was this is kind of like racing in twilight. It's pretty low light. You actually can't see how far ahead the chasers are. And when you're actually in the guts of the volcano, the riders wearing dark jerseys, if they're not on a Tron bike, can actually be pretty hard to see. So it's a bit of a strategic thing, I reckon, to wear darker colours and not have a Tron bike, because you're less noticeable and less chaseable.
Oh, there's your pro tip from Kate Bates from this broadcast. I like it, Kate. Here's the
Like
catch
a
being
ninja.
dress like a ninja, wear those slippers, be very, very quiet, and put in dark contacts so they can't see your eyes. And yeah, no, good call. So, hey, they made the catch, Kate. So it looks like we got the big group back together here. This is the Bs that we're looking at. So a little bit of a reset happening there for them as they're out on lap number 1 of 3 on a whole lot of lava. That's a good tip, though.
They're not that far from the halfway mark, actually, Dave, because it's 42K, but they will very quickly swing around and they'll be at that halfway mark. And in such a long race, it feels like an eternity before you're in the second half. So that's actually come around really quickly for the women. The men are now onto this first climb. What do you think, Dave? What's going to happen up here?
Well, going back to what you were saying, Kate, about this being a draftable climb, well, this is the kind of group that really comes into play with. With the women A's that we were looking at, there just isn't that much draft out there. We're not moving that much air around. But here, this is, I mean, you can see the spearhead shape. This is pretty classic bike racing right now. As taking a look at this group, they're moving at 40 kilometers per hour. The grade kicks up right now at 5%. They're flying. I mean, there's a significant benefit to sitting right in the sweet spot of that group. That's pretty classic right there. So a lot of these riders, yeah, you just don't go up this climb this fast. You don't get that many fit guys around you to ride with.
No, I noticed from doing some course recons, my fastest time up the volcano was when I had someone to chase. So I found somebody going a slightly faster pace than me and jumped wheels, and definitely had something to chase and something to draft. And it makes a really big difference. If you contrast that to one of the longer climbs, Dave, I couldn't hold a faster wheel. So it's, it doesn't make a difference, the draft effect, but this one, it really does.
Such an interesting psychological conversation. I think we have a few seconds to have that because this group's going to stay together on the climb, Kate. They, back in the early days of the hour record, it was being broken on a weekly basis for a while. And a big part of that was they were using searchlights that they would set at, so they'd take whatever the fastest time was and then say, well, what's 10 seconds faster than that? And they would set searchlights at that pace, right? And so riders were able to track that light and break the record week after week by having that psychological huge benefit of knowing exactly where you needed to be. And then they had to outlaw that. They had to stop allowing that to happen because that ability, and so in track and field, they call it the rabbit, right? Well, that's exactly what you were talking about, Kate. When you were chasing a rabbit, you were able to get another 2-3% out of yourself, right? And that really speaks to the psychology of a racer.
Yeah, it can make a really big difference actually. And we actually saw this happening quite a lot in the earlier climbs as well. This is what we're going to see here too. So Kreitman has gone, but he is not too far ahead. Felton, Heinlein, mashed potato in pursuit on the front there. Even though they may not be pulling away to create a big gap, and even though some of the riders may be outside that draft effect, it still gives them something to chase. And we can't understate the importance of that on a climb like this where you know that it's not too long. So for the men, they'll be going up in less than 6 minutes, I imagine, which you can kind of do. I mean, everybody's got this 5-minute mark in their head of where they can maintain quite a high anaerobic threshold effort within 5 minutes, but 6 minutes isn't too far to stretch it to. So psychologically, this climb is very doable.
Yeah, there's that saying you can always do a little bit more, right? But they don't talk about your 6-minute threshold time. But that's what we're looking for out here. But one of the things I love, if you're back in what I would call the chase group or the peloton right now, there's a huge sense of confidence that you have when you look around, you see the quality of riders around you, you're 100% confident that this is not a breakaway that's going to go away. And right now, I would be telling myself if I was in that group, good, I'm not on the high burn rate that those guys up there are. So hopefully they're burning their wick down a little bit while I'll have something left at the end. But what they're doing here is looking to collect the points. That's an early play. This is going to be John Heinlein here that we're looking at on the front. That's the Oh My God, They Killed Kenny team, one of our all-time favorites. And it looks to me like these three, I have to think that's the plan here, is to try to grab the lion's share of the points. And that Ghost was deployed. And our Penn Velo rider here, excuse me, is that going to be Felton? It is. Well, they're coming for you now because the gantry's going to show up in just a moment. Steepest part of the climb right here. And I think we should get our pen out and start scoring the first 10.
Yeah, these are some pretty hot moves over here. Duncan here. Wow. Oh, I think Quinn Felton over the top there. Wow. That was a big move from him. They're looking not only at first over line, which Felton quite easily got there in the end, but I think that he might have potentially, we'll have to wait until we see those segment times, but he sort of bided his time and made a big move at the end there, but he's not pushing up with it. Oh, look at that. Duncan, 6:05. So we thought just under 6 minutes, but around that 6-minute mark, they're doing so it's spot on. They need to change their mindset from 5-minute power to 6-minute power, Dave. But
we'll start a very big
descent. Yeah, yeah. We'll make it hashtag or something, or trend the hashtag trend or something like that. So we're looking at Caleb Carl here. He's just raced on this course. This is his second time around. He rode in the East as well, Dave. So he's just pretty much stepped off, had an energy drink, and he's back up again. What's interesting about that is he clearly knows how to race this course, and he's sitting quite comfortably at the back as they scoot him along down this descent. So very big effort by him.
I don't know that I've ever heard, Kate, of a rider doing back-to-back races. This is really, really impressive. And, I mean, there's warming up, and there's warming up, Caleb. Good grief. I mean,
Yeah,
I
good
heard a
grief. I
lot
think
of
that's
riders.
perfectly articulated.
I heard a lot of riders, Kate, talking about their experience on Whole Lotta Lava and saying that was extra. That was quite a day on the bike. And Caleb Carl is doubling down. Super impressive. That certainly gets a gold star. It's one of our rides of the day. That's for sure. As let's go back, I guess we're going split screen here, and I think that's the women's bees that we've got. Some real action going on over there as well. As the guys are now on the descent for the first time. They're out on lap one, so they won't be that far off from starting lap number two, where the women are already out on lap number two here, Kate. They're hitting hard.
Yeah, isn't this interesting how strung out they are without having anybody necessarily massively push the effort off the front? I think with the women, what we've seen is around the 280 watt mark is when they're really pushing the pace. That seems to be a bit of a general guideline to run your eye over it. There's so much data, Dave, isn't there? My goodness, we could get caught up in the numbers all day. We've got the heart rate, which is always pretty good litmus test and indicator of how they're feeling. Of course, cadence, when that drops below 80, generally that's a bit of an indicator they're carrying some fatigue and also that power. So let's run our eyes over these segment points. Hayley Gill, fastest through segment and first over the line to have that 30-point advantage over Alicia Stats in second. Velo Vixens, ATP and Joy Connolly sitting in third. Jessie Whitaker sitting there in fourth, and down it goes. But that's a pretty good move by Hayley Gill. Just quietly, Dave, I reckon she can go faster up that climb. Will she have the energy? I mean, will she have the interest to? I think she probably has the energy, but will that fall within their team tactics for her to light it up a little bit? Well, we'll have to wait and see, but I do think that she can probably climb a bit quicker up here, given her pedigree.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love that wrinkle that we add into that with the fastest timed segment out there. But Kate, you're 100% right. When you look, you can go to Zwift Power and find the race and look at the numbers. But all those numbers really do is tell you what neighborhood you're in. But they're not telling you exactly which house you're looking at, if you know what I mean. And you certainly can't just look at the numbers and say, well, there's your winner today. It never works out that way, to tell you the truth. So much comes down to where the rider is at right now with motivation and fitness, where their head is at, psychologically and physiologically. All of those things come into play, as well as the dynamics of the race itself and the team element too. So that's what I love about racing. If it was so easy, I guess that anybody who bets on horses or dog racing or whatever it might be would say that, that's why it's so complicated, is every race has its own story. Cabot here, the Vixen riders, had a really good ride today as well. Fighting right now here through a tough sector. But a day like today, with more than 20 minutes of full-on climbing, you're going to go through a bad 30-second stretch. Everybody does out there. You just have to fight through it, just like she did right there. Very, very impressive job. That's Morgan Cabot, the Canadian, on the Velocity Vixens. And that was impressive.
Yeah, I think if you only have a bad 30-second streak, you're actually doing really well. I mean, they're looking at, you're right,
on
just
the low side.
shy of 20 minutes of climbing. Yeah. Some people a lot more. Whitaker making the move here, significantly higher power, making that attack up around the 7 watts per kilo mark than Stutz and Miller. Connolly are holding behind. A 3-second gap has started to open up. Unless this hits 10 or 15 seconds, Dave, I won't be too concerned about what this may do to the race. But it is a reduced bunch, and they don't have a lot of riders left there really to chase.
Jessie Whitaker here. It's certainly a good sign, though, when you're able to open up a gap like this for the Vixen rider. Alicia Stats is so impressive. One of the riders that we've really identified through last season, as you said, Kate, into this year. She's an established heavy hitter out there now. That's a larger gap than it looks right now. 5 seconds back from Whitaker.
That is it. 5 seconds going over the top here will seem like quite a distance. Definitely. They've got a little bit, it is almost
Oh,
a bit
here comes
deceiving, all
Alicia.
these twists
Look at
and turns
this.
around, but here's the deep part. Whoa, Alicia on the move. She's bridged
Holy
across and
cow.
just kept going. This could be
She
really
just went
dangerous if she
plaid.
keeps this going.
Yeah. Well, and that's a really, really good indicator. Remember this moment right now for the end of the race. Now, that's not the finish line. That is our queen of the mountain there. And we'll score that one for Seattle's Alicia Stats of the Revo team. But that tells me Alicia's the woman to beat today, Kate.
Well, I'm not sure that she will keep going with this. It is very hard on this descent to
Oh,
stay away
no,
from a
absolutely. Not
chasing
saying that
pack.
she's on a breakaway. I'm
Definitely.
saying when they do come to the finish, though, she's just shown me that she's got it today. I'm not saying that this is
Well,
an attack for the win.
she's
Yeah.
actually got a couple of options, doesn't she? Because she could do that on that final climb. And then by then, there might not be much of a pack to chase her. So that's kind of an interesting tactic to think
Well,
about for her as well. Whichever way, she's kind of
certainly,
shown them that she's got the legs today.
yeah, certainly keep that one in your back pocket because it looks to me like the next time they hit that climb, I'm going to estimate that she's in a group of 6 riders. Maybe actually this group, right? Actually, this is it right here. Lock it down, close the back door, put a padlock on it. As this will be your vanguard, the front group. Connolly is going to have the fight of her life to rejoin right now. That looks like a small gap, but it's not, believe me. Closing that down because every second right now, they've gone into super tuck mode. They're going to start relaying each other. I think we've all been there before, as you can feel it. It's like sand going through your fingers, right? It is so hard to close down this gap right now because they're rolling like a freight train. And you're just one little old engine doing everything you can.
You're full of the great analogies today, Dave. You're on fire. The the super tuck is being deployed, which is a good way for them to rest their legs a little bit. They've got to be careful that when they jump back up, their legs are still have a bit of blood in them and feeling okay. Sometimes I think when you jump into the super tuck, when you start pedaling again, it's a bit of a rude shock. I think in a group of 5, they're in fairly safe hands in terms of any breakaway threat. I think from now on, it is just a case of motoring through to that final KOM. They're well past the halfway mark, so only 17 odd kilometres left to race 25 and a half kilometres finished already. That's gone pretty quickly. I think even for the riders, they might disagree on that, Dave. What do you reckon? We're here nice and comfortable in the commentary box saying, oh, that looks to have gone pretty easily so far.
I thought the same thing, Kate, to be honest, where uh, this might be the most deceptive race to watch. I think if someone didn't tell you what the vertical gain was, and I'll tell you, it's 511 meters today. And you can see they've done 328 at this point. That is a lot of climbing. 328 meters in 40 minutes? Wow. And this isn't even considered, this isn't something like Innsbruck after party or something like that. Yet the number of kilometers is pretty close. I think Innsbruck after party, that was a KOM after party, that was something like 600 kilometers, meters of climbing that day. So, and the distance at 40, just under 42 kilometers out here. But this is your winning group now, so we can start taking some inventory here. Haley Gill would certainly like to have a conversation with me, I'm sure, talking about Alicia Stats, where Haley Gill very well could win this race as well today. Don't want to forget about her or sell her short, that's for sure.
And
So
Haley
it looks like
Gill's
she's on
been on the up and up, hasn't she?
absolutely. Yeah, that's another rider
So
that I look forward to seeing. The Haley Gills and the Alicia Stats, Anna Rogers as well. These are riders that would find a nice home in the Premier League.
she's a very well-rounded rider too, Haley Gill. She's actually what we would kind of almost say relatively new to Zwift. She's a level 31 Zwifter, so that's still a lot of hours in the saddle, but a lot of these athletes are up around the 40, 50 level mark. So
If you
she's
ask
still
Nathan, if you
plugging
ask
away
Nathan, a
toward
level
that.
30, a level 30 is just a baby Zwifter.
Yeah, exactly. I think he must be at level 147 by now.
Right.
They have a
Yeah.
special level for him.
Yeah, like the same level that the Dalai Lama and Buddha are at, Nathan is at, right? It's beyond. That's for sure. Well, and
It does
there's
make a
something to
difference to the way they race, though, doesn't it, Dave? And to kind of
absolutely.
how familiar in game they are, because we sometimes see some of the riders that they're clearly just engines. They've really got a big set of lungs on them and some very strong legs, but it still takes a little bit of racecraft um, to get that
You know,
done, um, and to be able to translate that physical prowess over to racing in Zwift. It takes a little bit of time and a little bit of kind of getting used to. And I love that intersection between in real life riders versus the Zwift masters.
yeah, I absolutely agree, Kate. You know who I look at? The Hino rider, Caroline Williams, a mom and someone who I believe, don't want to speak out of school, but I think that she posted at the end of the year something that showed that she had Zwifted every single day of 2020. And when we talk about Zwifting, I'm
Wow.
not talking about jumping on for 15 or 20 minutes. I'm talking about some monster rides. And you can see that physiologically, she has turned herself into an absolute monster. She's not alone either. And that kind of dedication, I guess it seems like we're kind of moving on from the negativity of 2020, or hopefully we are. But some people let 2020 eat them up, and other people said, no, I'm gonna destroy this year. I'm gonna come out of it stronger. And those that did, a lot of them seemed like Zwift was a good place to make that commitment. You just had a chance. So many people were at home, uh, so much more than they used to be. So I hope you were able to make the most of it out there. But these women certainly have. These are some fit monsters that we've got on our screen right now. Broomham here, another one of the Revo riders. But you can see Haley Gill. Go back and look at we're starting to combine the points now that she has earned along the way. She's already picked up 38 just by herself, but Alicia Stats, 34. Joy Connolly from ATP Racing sitting on 27. Jesse Whitaker, 21. 18 points for Anna Rogers. Morgan Cabot, 14. 11 for Broomham. Jasmine Miller of ATP sitting on 11. Deirdre Douglas of the Vixens on 4 points, and Pamela Troyer's picked up 3 along the way. So that's your top 10 points earners up to this point here for our women's A's. They're coming up on 30 kilometers into a 42-kilometer race here. 3 laps around Whole Lotta Lava. Dave Toll with Kate Bates. And Kate, we're moving into the finale now.
Well, they'll come around and see that one lap to go sign. Unfortunately, we don't have a bell for them. So ding, ding, ding,
There it is.
ladies, if you're watching, that's your one lap to go through this section. I want to pick up on some of the words you used to describe the athletes before, because I absolutely love the terminology we get to use in Zwift. We get to describe people as monsters and beasts, and it be a really good thing. Like, you really want to get called that.
You want
It's
to
a
hear that?
massive
Yeah.
compliment being called that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
He
I think
called me a
that's
monster.
yeah.
So we're going to go
So,
ahead and I'm sorry
sorry,
to
Dave.
jump on you there, Kate. Yeah, some technical. We're going to go ahead and use Caleb's screen, I believe, to show you what's going on out here. It's fun. So Caleb Carl is the only rider actually that we're able to show you from. So we're going to show you the race from Caleb's perspective for a while. That's kind of fun, actually, Kate. I'm going to imagine that I'm actually in the race right now, but this would be exactly what his perspective is on things. Again, Caleb Carl, the Skylab rider. We mentioned he's in his second race of the day.
And looking
Huh,
pretty relaxed and
I would
cruisy,
say.
going up the volcano now for the 5th time. Today, it looks like he's just warming up.
So this is interesting when you look at the text, Kate, that he's got going here. Is this going to be just his team that he's communicating with here? That's his Twitch chat that we're looking at. So that could be you or I if we wanted to give him a shout out there on his Twitch chat.
Yeah, it's
So
good that they
one of
have
the
so many avenues to communicate, isn't it, Dave? Like not only with their teammates, but also with people interacting with them and getting involved. I know Nathan Guerra is big on Twitch as well. A lot of the Aussies are starting to stream their rides on Twitch. It's a pretty cool and interesting element to think, and it may be slightly creepy, Dave, that you can dial into people's living room and watch them exercise. It's quite
yeah.
cool. Look at this new media that we're part of.
Well, and here's the sprint that we're looking at right now. This is Caleb's perspective once again. And what's important here is that he's staying right in the draft. Oh, no, there's that. You've talked about it, Kate, that close the gap thing that drives us crazy. Well, he's okay. He's going to be in a group right now, getting over the climbs. He's got one more trip up that volcano KOM. Got to give Caleb Carl credit. That guy, a beast, a monster. Either way, both. A monster,
Beast
a
and monster. I
combination.
mean, either way,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
I think it's definitely something very positive. We are definitely being kind when we describe a rider like that, but it is quite funny language, isn't it? But we've talked
it
about that
is.
before, how crazy the language can sound if you're describing a cycling race to a
Well,
non-cycling person. When you say, "Well, she sat on me and then she attacked me and then she hit me over the top," and you're like, "What happened?
even worse,
What went
yeah.
on there?"
No, I've had people at in real life events comment about like, wow, a lot of military analogies, like they're bombing down and they're drilling it, and like it's interesting how you fall into different categories of with the commentary as well. Uh, yeah, it's fascinating how that all works, trying to describe the effort. And for a while there, Kate, the big thing, maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the Belgian era, I call it, where it was all about suffering and groveling and gutters and that kind of thing. I think people got tired of that. That wasn't really that attractive for folks, right? I mean, who wants to be
No,
involved in
no,
suffering,
that's true.
groveling, and being guttered, right? It doesn't sound like a romantic sport.
No, it takes the romance out of it somewhat. I feel like Morgan Cabot's having a bit of a lonely ride out there at the moment, but this is a good move. Now, we didn't see when this happened. She's heading now onto the bottom slopes of the climb. You can see the chasers in the background there, but she's got a 7-second margin, which is the biggest margin we've seen in this race so far. So, this is a pretty interesting
This will be fun.
timing here. Yeah, we saw Alicia Stats close a 3-second gap in about 100 meters, but I'm not sure that that's what's going to happen here. I think that whole bunch might chase pretty hard to bring this back.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is a really good look at the dynamics of racing. We saw in one of the B or C categories from America's East a young man that had a 9-second advantage with about 2K to go. And it's just right on the line when you look at the motivated group of 20 that's chasing and the dynamics, the physics of how this all works. And same thing here. It takes an incredible effort to build up a 7-second advantage, but that 7-second advantage has come down to 5. Now, there's not so much of the drafting. I mean, they are going 23 kilometers per hour right now. So, I mean, there is a draft. Don't kid yourself. It's not a huge draft, but it makes a difference. But as it comes down, or it's hovering at 5 now, but there should be a bit of a surge from that group behind. Still, Cabot doing a tremendous job here. This is a great indicator. One thing that you like to see as a director is just heart. Racers who race, Kate, who like to get out, put their nose in the wind. Sometimes you have to rein them in a little bit. Sometimes you have to work on keeping the powder dry. But it's always better to approach it, I think, from having a rider who's a little too excited, a little too motivated, who's been doing the work, rather than someone. If you find yourself having to motivate someone to get into the racing, I think it's a lost cause.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to describe it. If you're not self-motivated and you're not out there kind of chomping at the bit to really get going, then well, what are you really doing out there? I think we've been a bit blessed though, in that this group of women that we are currently watching, it's a small group, but each and every one of them at some point has been the aggressor and has really made the race super interesting. And we're pretty lucky to have that. Now, this is the chase group that we're looking at, led by
Unfortunately, I've
Winchester.
got a B. I've got a B on my screen here, unfortunately.
You need to
It's
swat that away,
negative.
Dave. That could
Yeah.
sting you.
Kate, it's hard to believe it's negative 25 degrees Celsius here in Colorado. I
Jeepers.
can't believe a bee is still alive. But there, actually, this is classic. ATP, Jim Withers and company, there have a honey farm in Michigan, and Jim really supports this team. And it's sort of that's their jam is the honey and the bees. So good job, ATP. That's the Chase group that we're
It
looking
is
at.
good to see. It is good to see these rider feeds. We get a bit of an idea of how tough they're doing it. We're not just looking at the metrics, but also the body language, which I think is sometimes invaluable. Just adds that extra little piece of data from the avatars and all those numbers we're able to see. And you can also get a bit of an idea from that graph down the bottom of the effort, how on and off that it's been. A lot of different colours there, up and down, kind of gives that away. So this is the Chase group. We were just seeing Winchester in her pain cave there. They're now a fair way behind the leaders, nearly 2 minutes behind the lead group that we have switched to them now. Anna Rogers, now there's a name that we've muttered many a time because of her aggressive tactics and moves. She's one of the very strong kind of stalwarts of this league now. I'd be a bit upset if these riders stepped up to Prem League, Dave. I feel like they've become family over the last couple of seasons. We've got to watch them grow and progress. So they're doing a really good job out there today. And Morgan Cabot still 4 seconds up. That gap is not coming down quite as quickly as we may have thought.
Well, you are going to love when your daughters go away to college. Then,
Oh yeah, yep, I'm gonna love that. I mean,
you
luckily that's
really
not
look
really an
forward to
Aussie
that.
thing, though, Dave. We don't do that. We live at home until we're
You'll
30
keep them at
and
home.
drive our parents
Good.
crazy.
Perfect. Well, so they did bring Cabot back, Morgan Cabot here. So resetting things a little bit. I loved hearing you say that muttering Anna Rogers, because I'm sure that plenty of riders have muttered that damn Rogers is on the attack again. I can't stand this lady because she is awesome, aggressive out there. And it looks like we got everybody back with the men's race. Thank you, Nathan. Great job. So that was cool, though, getting to see it from Caleb Carl's perspective. But this is everybody together now. Well, not everybody. Should say, Kate, the riders that have made it to this point, they've got about 12K to go. I'm talking about, there you go, the picture, that's Caleb Carl, again, the Skylab rider. We're talking about Caleb doing his second race of the day and helping us out, getting to see the world from his perspective. But here they are, the gladiators of Zwift, just about to move into finale mode. They've got one trip up Volcano KOM in front of them. I'm sure. Well, it's funny to say, I was going to say no one could be looking forward to that, but that's not true at all. There are riders that are champing at the bit, Kate, because this is what they do. There's Camel Riley.
Of slighter frame than we are, perhaps, Dave.
Maybe.
But
yeah, maybe.
This is a much smaller group than the last time we saw the men's field. So there's been quite a lot of damage that has happened in the interim there. Caleb Carl, every time we cross to him, he just looks really comfortable. So I think they have put enough pressure on that they've jettisoned some riders out the back, especially up that climb, but not so much pressure that everybody is just on the absolute limit. I reckon that time is yet to come, and I think that will happen up this next climb because there's a lot of riders in here who won't really fancy themselves in a sprint, and it is a pretty fast sprint. Even though it's slightly uphill and there's 2 tiers to it, it's still proving to be a fairly fast finish. So this is going to be their last chance up this climb to do some real damage to those power riders and see if they can put their climbing prowess to good use.
Yeah, as you said, that's a large enough group for the men as we say goodbye to the guys that there's some riders that will just try to stay in the slipstream there, make it over the climb and be in the mix for the final. Here we go, back in with the Anna Rogers and the women. And this is it. It gets grippy now, Kate. Last time up the climb. So riders to watch? Well, for me, it's Alicia Stats, without any doubt. Morgan Cabot, but here we go. Haley Gill was just on the tip of my tongue. I was going to say that she's the other one that's really shown out here today. Bright star. And Haley Gill is back at it. She's got the sledgehammer out, Kate, and is wailing away on the front. So this is it. This should blow that group up now. I don't know what we've got ahead of us, but it's not going to be pretty. So score another bonus sprint for Haley Gill. Alicia Stats, then Jesse Whitaker coming through, Anna Rogers right after that. But it is full gas from here on in. They are down to, let's call it, just over 5K until this one is done and dusted back in the volcano.
Well, that was a late move by Gill. Look at that. I'm putting Haley Gill and turning her into Hill, which is quite appropriate given the slopes that they're on.
That might be her email.
Late, yeah. A fairly kind of late and fast move. She opened up a very big gap very quickly. Without having to do too much, that gap really opened up. Now, they have all come back together, but it's definitely clear that between Starts with her attack on the last lap, between Gill with her jump across to the KOM in that lap, that these two could have a real 1-2 punch coming into that 2-tier sprint. I reckon that would be a very good tactic for them and a pretty efficient one too.
Yeah, this is a complicated finale. It really is. And this is a hard group to win out of here. We're going to learn a lot here watching this group come to the line today. I'm going to expect that this one happens. It's not going to be 3 riders in a photo finish. I think our winner is going to be alone by a couple meters. It's going to be something that happens 500 meters out that wins this one, is my guess. You never really do know, though. Haley Gill is impressed.
Earlier, Dave, you'll laugh at this one. Nathan earlier literally said this is not the kind of sprint you can win by attacking early on this 2-tier. And as though they were listening to him, the attack went and it stuck. So you're spot on. This is definitely the kind of sprint finish where if they do go pretty early, they can get it. It is less common than getting it right on the line. But if anybody can do it, I think this is the combo that can.
Yeah, this is not that let's all get to 200 meters and then see who can make the most watts, Kate. I think we both really agree on that. This is going to be much more a sleight of hand type experience there. Looks like the guys are just starting the climb for the final time now. This is always a lot of fun when the first rider that hits hard, it just doesn't stop at that point. It just builds to a crescendo on this climb.
So this will be very interesting. Will someone take an early flyer and push that 5-minute peak power into a 6-minute peak power for the effort, or will they wait a bit until the top? Time will tell, but the one tactic that I haven't seen been very effective so far is attacking around the middle section of the climb. It seems like people feel like they're close enough to the finish that they can just hang on, and everybody seems to just really bite the bullet and suffer a little bit more if they try that.
I could not agree more. Timing is everything. You're not going to win the race on the climb. I think everybody realizes that now. But you can lose it. You can find yourself in so much trouble that you don't make the split. I do anticipate not all of these riders are going to the line together. Talking about the men now, over on the right-hand side of your screen, great time to use this split screen feature here because we've got 2 races that really are in the crux. The women down to just a little over a couple K to go. So they're in the business end, brass tacks only at this point. Whereas the guys, they've got some suffering to do, no doubt about it. This is not going to be fun for them, this trip up the climb. So we will have a women's winner here first. Will it be Haley Gill? Will it be Alicia Stats? Anna Rogers? Who's going to pull this one out? It's going to be really interesting. It'll be well earned. And Kate, I've talked about this before, but I think you could probably relate more than anyone, being a world champion yourself. The quality of a victory is so dependent on who you're racing against. It only feels good if you feel like you're beating top riders, right? So if getting a win out of this group today for the ladies, it's going to be well earned out there. And good on you, for sure. Nobody wants it easy.
Definitely.
I truly believe that. Once you get to the highest level, maybe in second grade, you want it easy. But once it gets real, you want this to be hard to make it legit because legitimate is what it's all about.
Definitely. It doesn't matter whether there's 150 people in the race or whether there's 10. If you are beating quality riders that you respect, then you will walk away with your head held high. That is what we are seeing playing out in the women's race. Hayley Gill sits in the box seat. There is a small bunch still, but she has shown some pretty impressive powers. And we've actually been saying this for weeks now. Last week we said the same in the team's time trial. The week before we said, wow, what a rock star she is, throwing back all the way to the Innsbruck after party. That's where we really said, wow, we've got a new player here that has joined this squad and is doing a lot of damage. We will keep watching her for sure. A little bit of action playing out over in the fellas going up this climb, but no big heart attacks yet at all. And this is that flat section in the middle before it does kick up toward the end. This allows everybody a bit of a chance to recover, and as we're seeing, a bit of a chance to regroup.
Yeah, this might be the last chance you really have on the climb for the men to just take a deep breath here because it'll ratchet up one more time. And I'm going to move over to the ladies as the guys are still Grupo Compacto here all together, as this now is going to, thank you, Nathan. This is going to be good. All right, we are locked and loaded. This is not a drill. Big time bike racing back on Watopia. A whole lot of lava has come down to this. Just a few hundred meters from now is the finish line, and it looks to me like Rogers goes. That is it. Rogers has hit out with authority. She's going to throw the power up. It's going to be an aero power up. Let's see. They're not going to play around with her. Hayley Gill's going to try to close this one down. Alicia Stadt sitting on the wheel there. That's going to be Joy Connolly moving up. Okay, they're nailing it back. So it looks like Rogers is going to come back into the group. We're now just a couple hundred meters from the line. Oh, I'm going to throw it back to you as Whitaker goes now, Kate.
It's been a late charge from Whitaker. Hayley Gill hot on her heels, though. Anna Rogers has been pushed back a bit. That was a brave early move from her. Bit too early to hold on. But Ellen Broomham, she may just get this. She is flying around the outside. She's overtaken.
Here comes Hayley.
Hayley Gill has dropped a power up. Here she comes.
Oh.
She didn't get there, Dave. She didn't get there. Helen Broomham, what a finish.
Helen, you're my hero. That was awesome. Holy cow, Revo rider Helen Broomham. Wow. Out of that group to hold on, that is a gritty performance. She dug deep, scraped the bottom of the barrel, Kate, found every last watt, and spent them all on a whole lot of lava. Great job, Helen.
That was a really impressive finish. But what are we seeing over here? Felton, he moved last lap. This is a replay of what just happened. We just want to make sure we catch up with how this action went. But Felton on the move, going for the KOM and opening a pretty sizable gap while he does it, Dave. Look at that sea of orange in that right-hand side, those massive powers. Wow. Quinn Felton, is he going to keep it going?
We're going to jump back in with live images now as we pick up the front of the bike race with 5K to go. They just brought Quentin Felton back into the fold, so we've hit the reset button with this group. It looks like John Heinlein, a few more riders are going to rejoin here, Kate. Actually, we're going to reset pretty significantly with the second group rejoining there. So Felton would maybe get our most aggressive rider award. He softened up this group, but looks like we're going to be over 20 riders coming to the line together if this stays together, which I would anticipate it would.
It is very difficult from now on in to get much of a break unless it is one of those. They need to get to the bottom of the descent. Not a lot of point attacking down these slopes because the speeds are so high. You simply won't get a workable break when you're going 65 kilometers an hour, Dave. But once they get onto that flat and before they take that left-hander into back into the volcano, and that's where the two-tier sprint kind of starts. That is a really big effort. Now, I want to point out there's a big difference between starting your sprint early on that two-tier versus doing a late breakaway, attempting to have a late jump and doing that. And so that is what I anticipate seeing, because that is a very good chance for some of the riders. We've got the B women on the left of screen here, Dave. They are coming into the finish now too, and this is where they go back into the volcano, and they now have one tier left of that little sprint. If they go too early now, it can be quite a slog all the way to the line.
Well, and this is going to be, is it Pop here? Cryogen rider Heidi Poppy is the rider that we've got from Cryogen here with a little gap. I'm wondering, is it going to be enough? Because they've hit the afterburners right behind Heidi here. They're going to run out of real estate pretty quickly. Get the photo finish camera out. Oh, my. And it looks like it is going to be out of Seattle, the Audi women's team. And this should be Natika, I believe, coming across the line. Claire Law finishing up there. That's
well, you've
awesome.
got to be careful not to go too early, isn't it? It's really getting them. It's really that late push to the finish where they're getting a bit of momentum over those little lumps and rolling back in to come over the top and take that victory. It almost seems a little bit of a stolen one when it happens in that favor.
So Natika, I think I'm correct here, is the rider that just won, is also the director of the Seattle-based Audi women's team. She was telling me that Claire Law just virtually Everested on Saturday. She did it in under 13 hours out there. Yeah.
Oh,
think about that, right? 8,840 meters, I believe it is, to Everest in under 13 hours. So they are doing a great job out there talking about that Audi women's team. Love seeing that.
That is very impressive. This would seem like just a walk in the park compared to that Everesting effort.
Yeah.
But good on her for actually wanting to ever get back on her bike again.
I agree. That could be a swan song performance, but not for these athletes. All right, well, here we go. Back in. You know who I just noticed is in this group? This will make you smile, Kate. Speaking of Zwift community, Brian Kellison, the man we were speaking about last week. Remember Brian? Yep. So nice to see Brian hanging in here with
he's got a great Twitch feed, doesn't he? Doesn't he, Dave? He really gives back to the whole community with the amount of engagement he puts out. He would be grimacing at this point because this is the business end of the race. Once they turn left here into and head back into that volcano, that is the first little kicker up. Then they get into that hot lava, and it is another kicker up. Is somebody brave enough to make an early move?
Boy, remembering Caleb Carl is in this group, can you imagine? So he's now into 1,000 meters of climbing in the last couple hours. This guy is a machine. Machina, as they say. If he is, there's Caleb right there, the Skylab rider on the back of the group. If he wins this one, I have to say that that's the ride of the week.
That would be a very impressive. Nobody's been brave enough, I'll note, to take that early flyer. So now we are waiting for a sprint. Don't go too early, fellas. We've seen it fail time and time again for anybody who has dared to jump too early. So now we've got a bit of cat and mouse going on as they come into this finish. All of a sudden, we are going to see all of those numbers turn orange, Dave.
And they've lit the rocket. It looks like it's going to be Holloway who's gone first. But, Kate, this is that exact moment where you want to be near the front but not on the front. Try to help everybody finish what's on their plate before you start on yours. And was that Felton? Let's see who gets this one. Boy, I'm going to have to go.
I feel like he deserves it, Dave. That was a ripping day. Not just sprint, but he had a solid day out on course.
So that's going to be well played with the Arrow power up there, with the white and red jersey. We watch the line; it comes at you so, boy. So this is one of those, the possibility of latency where we're going to have to go to Zwift servers
Ooh,
rather than the replay to verify who wins that one. To be honest, that's
that is a cracking finish, and the banner just proves that. Isn't that a
yeah.
beautiful shot with the banner right in the way there? But it looks to us like it's dead on. So it really will come down to literally a photo finish, except a data photo finish in this
Right.
case. Oh, and didn't Barnes really finish with a rush
That's
too? I mean, Felton, he had to be carrying some fatigue
so.
from what he did up those climbs.
So, Kate, my other job, is, as you know, I've called you winning races before, is standing at a finish line with a microphone yelling out to the crowd who wins, right? And doing that by
Yeah.
eye. You have no photo finish. So there's a tendency by folks to go for the rider that looks like they're going fastest at the if you've got two that are tied basically, right? It always looks like the rider coming from behind wins, but that's far from always the case, to tell you the truth. So, and again, you have to go back and look at Zwift servers, and that's the best way to get an accurate winner there. This is going to be a C race we're jumping in with. Cheney of the Revo team. Looks like two riders. This is the front of the bike race. I am correct. Yes, it is. Here we go. And that was it.
Well, and this
Done and
is
dusted.
another case of leaving it. You can't go too early in this sprint, and this is where the power ups are being dropped. The acceleration is being made by Camp. Culver a little bit late to get out of her seat and react, and I think Camp will take this over the top in the orange. What a good finish from her. That was a great. There's been some great sprint finishes, which is curious because when you look at a course like this, Dave, there's no way you would say we're expecting to see some really great sprint finishes.
Completely agree. Counterintuitive, but so often, again, I guess some of the sayings that you hear in cycling, you hear a lot, but it's because they make sense. And I'll say this one again: racers make the race. No matter how hard or easy the course is, they're the ones that are going to determine the way things play out.
Yeah, it's definitely. We've got
Give
Katie
Kate
Levi we're looking at the moment. She's been around for a long
super
time,
popular.
Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's one of these level 147 Zwifters up there with Nathan.
Yeah, that's a very cool club to be in. They call them, a lot of riders, Jarvis riders, Jarvis Club. Her husband runs Zwift Hype, so they're all Zwift, and yeah, the Levi's are awesome.
And all
So
hype.
a big
I
thank
love
you.
that. What a good combo.
Yeah, no kidding. So this is three riders coming to the line together, representing three different teams. I always, my heart always goes out when you have one rider who's outnumbered. I guess it's that much more exciting when she's able to overcome two riders. But in this case, it looks like everybody's in on their own. They're 2K from the finish, let's call it.
This is the kind of slog part where you're not close enough to be really readying for the sprint, but you are close enough to not be wanting to waste any energy at all. So this is where the real kind of waiting game and patience comes in. And I think that a lot of people are sprinting a bit too early on this course because it's a bit hard to be patient down the descent and waiting for it. It feels like you are waiting for that sprint for quite a long time.
And it's an uphill sprint too, even though it's not a severe uphill. It's always so hard because the finish line is right there. You can almost reach out and touch it, but you forget that it's still 30 seconds away. It looks like it's 5 seconds away. It's like when you're in Las Vegas and you're walking, Kate, you know, you see your hotel, it's right there, but it turns out that was 7 miles away when you started walking to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's a great analogy.
So this is always a big challenge for riders. Actually, Kate, is a points race. One of the beautiful things about riding on the track is that you have so many opportunities to go through the process of winning or losing a sprint. And because you do it five times every 10 minutes out there, and it becomes, repetition is the mother of learning. So not many times do you have a legitimate chance to go to a finish line with two other riders where it matters, where you're racing for the win. You'll learn a lot about how this works, about timing, about it's not really a joke when you talk about helping other riders finish what's on their plate before you start on yours. But that was a while ago. Now we're into animal instincts. Tactics? That was a conversation for a little while ago. There is no wind to worry about. So it doesn't matter if you're on the right or the left. There's a lot of those in real life things, Kate, that you can throw out the window. Now it comes down to instinct, nothing but instinct.
And just readying that body for the war that is a sprint finish. They'll be
Love
chunking
it.
down the gears at this point. They'll be getting ready, shaking their legs out because not a lot of power going through the pedals. They have backed it off a little
And
bit,
now we
but the back off here, the power-ups have been dropped. They're on the move, Dave.
Yeah, and here we go. That's it. It engages. We are now locked and loaded. The sprint has begun. The finish line will come up quickly now. And the charge. Oh, another photo finish, Kate Bates. Oh, la la. What a day we've had. I think Katie Levi might have got it. Maybe. We'll see. Again, the back end
Wowee.
API don't lie.
Well, look, that's pretty entertaining. I've got to say, at the beginning of this whole series around these courses, I thought we are going to see dribs and drabs people coming in. We are going to see sprint finishes where it's looking like Chris Froome is sprinting against Alberto Contador. That's not pretty for anybody. If you haven't seen it, Google it. It's a good one. But seriously, we did not expect to see such dynamic sprint finishes. This has been a real cracker.
I agree. It speaks to the depth that we've got in these fields as well, that so many riders are able to be there for the finale. I love it. Great sign for the Zwift Racing League. Tremendous day. Again,
Yeah.
don't let the small fields fool you. These women are racing with a lot of heart out there, and we're all going to be better for it. Same thing. The guys, the fields aren't small at all. Those are some real battles going on. So keep it up, America's West. Keep it up, Kate Bates.
Yeah.
Always great being with you.
Well, let's take a look at the results, Dave, because we will see some familiar names on this list that we have been shouting about all day and some very impressive rides. I feel like this has been my favourite course of all of them, which is possibly a bit surprising. Helen Bromham, she is your ride of the day, Dave. I know that she really got your heart going in the finish there, so good for her to take that win ahead of Hayley Gill. Look how close that is. 0.09 of a second.
Wow.
That is incredibly close. Joy Connolly coming in third. Starts in fourth. Jessie Whitaker in fifth. Anna Rogers, she made the early move. She paid for it, but she still rolled in for sixth. Morgan Cabot carrying some heavy legs into the finish after a massive attack up that climb and a very brave move. I applaud her for that. Jasmine Miller in eighth. Jana Gillick coming in ninth. And Rachel Winchester rounding out that top 10.
So that's the A's. Let's take a look at the B's now. And it was Natika, the team director, delivers. Congratulations on a massive win. Heidi Puppy taking the silver medal, and then Laura Thompson for bronze. It's Claire Law in fourth, Morgan Aldridge fifth, Anna L for sixth, Laura Mays in seventh, Grace Hutter in eighth, Stephanie Ostbring in ninth, and Ashley Hudson rounds out our top 10 for a hotly contested West B women's race.
All right, let's take a look at the C. Bria Fallon took the win there for the Meerkats ahead of Katie Slatter. Beverly Cheney third, Lauren Camp coming in fourth. Christine Culver, we saw the sprint between she and Lauren Camp there. That was a very tight one. For fifth, AJ Breck in sixth, Claire Babcock in seventh, Marcy Varley in eighth, and Tara Fielder Graham rounding out that final spot.
All right, so that'll wrap up the women. Let's take a look now at the A men out of America's West, and it was Michael Flanagan taking the win. So there you go, as they went to the back end API. Congratulations, Michael. That is a big one on a tough course. And look at this, Kate. 3.8 watts per kilogram versus 4.6. That's the largest difference I've ever seen between first and second, and that's less work that Flanagan did. Or, well, let's put it this way, more efficient. Michael, wow. Quinn Felton taking the silver medal, Jason Barnes for bronze, John Heinlein the third for fourth. Not John Heinlein the fourth for third, which he'd probably rather have it that way. Duncan Johnson for fifth. Joey DeLoss Reyes for WTRL, which is really bizarre because DeLoss is my middle name, Kate, and I've never seen anybody with that name before anywhere. So cool, Joey. We share that. John Vanderveen in seventh, Felipe Nystrom in eighth, Edwin Park in ninth, and Robin Swinton in 10th.
Well, that was really, really tight finishing across the board. You would have had a tough time standing on the finish line, calling the difference
Yeah.
there. Let's take a look at the Bs. E. Flater took the win there. Again, another really tight sprint finish ahead of Craig Noons. Jerome Ryken sitting in third. Daniel Larson, he took the fourth. Is that a little devil emoji after his name? Maybe that is a bit of his
bug.
Racing personality. Yeah, a little bit of a devil avatar there. In fifth, Rory McAdams, Jed Schneider coming in sixth, Josh Keating in seventh, Kevin Frudd in eighth. We had a Prime Minister called Kevin Rudd, so maybe that's a bit of an ode to him in the old Kevin Frudd. Mike Metz in ninth and Nelson Mittich coming in 10th.
I was thinking Deflator would be a funny name for a bike racer. So,
oh yeah,
all right,
yeah. You got that one.
So we had a great day.
I completely missed that one.
Yeah, a lot of time on my hands over here. Yeah. So, Kate, great day as always. I can't believe we're down to 2 races left. They're gonna be out in Richmond next week, and then we'll be in London for our final team time trial to wrap up this season 2. But that was race 6. I agree with you, by the way. I think that Whole Lot of Lava might be my favorite course right now. As far as one that brings out the best racing, yeah, that would be it.
Yeah, it'll be definitely a hard one to beat. So, Dave, thank you very much. Always good company. And look, I look forward to seeing you in Libby Hill for the after party next week. Let's see if that course can be just as exciting as this week, because we are getting into the very back end, the business end of the season. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks to Nathan and Martin in the back end who make all of this community league come together. You're doing an awesome job, and we'll see you next week.